And we're live.
Yay! Hey everybody, give us a C cone, everybody. Give us a C cone.
Oh, what?
A C cone. Oh, yeah, you spelled second wrong.
Oh,
Give us a C cone. What are you, an idiot?
we're waiting for Jacques Cousteau's ghost.
Oh my goodness.
C cone.
Hi Laura. Hi
Dan.
Dan. That's easier.
That's a lot easier.
Hi Dan. Hey Jeff McKinney.
Still nothing. Chad's in the green room, he says. Something's not right.
That's
Hold
weird.
on a second. Hold on a second. I wonder if I had.
Did you send two different links? Did you send him a link earlier or something?
I mean, I made this link earlier. I wonder if I copied an old episode.
Yeah, just send him a freshie and just be like,
I did. I fired off.
Okay.
But it's not going to him. It's going to the in-between.
In-between, sir.
In-between's like the upside down?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
This is weird. Us like pre-gaming. I know it's 7:30ish, but us like pre-gaming live in front of the whole world right now. This is usually where I talk shit about like Rhett and Dan and everybody. And like I didn't get that chance, you know. We just turned it right on. Oh, hey Rhett. I think I owe him $2 now.
Let me see. I may. What am I going to do here? So I'm gonna drop real quick, and I'll be right back.
Okay. You're gonna drop.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys don't get dropped too.
Okay.
I think. Let me see what happens. Maybe. Hey, Chad.
Ooh.
That's me.
I mean, I could just unmute myself. I think that's easier. Hey, that was Rhett, you were close. I was actually singing Nothing But a G Thing by Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg.
So,
That was the most awesome thing we've ever done.
I was having so much fun. I've never felt so free in my life mute me more often.
I go back to the Drinksmith chat, and he's just in there.
Oh God. Oh.
There he
is.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Eccles sent you the wrong link. That's fucked up, dude.
Let's have drink our way through it.
That's right. Sorry about that.
We've done that 319 weeks in a row.
Not sent the wrong link.
Well, we drank our way through it 319.
This is true. All right. The chat is blowing up, excited to see all these mistakes happening. So I think we're about set. So this is weird because we do have people watching.
Okay.
My understanding was that you were coming on to talk about the Vatted Rye.
That was mine as well.
The problem is,
prepared, but you guys got solo.
We got sent the slow and low. So I figure we can taste the slow and low, but we can still focus on the Vatted.
No, that's great. And here's the thing. I mean, really, truly, the way all of this whiskey came together, and these brands were born, all started with the purchase of the barrels that came with this. I worked on the creation of this brand starting, 13 years ago with Rob. And during this process is how these other two brands were built. They all are like, are interconnected. And, you wouldn't have Lockstock and the Vatted Rye really if it not had, Rob hadn't started down the slow and low path.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we'll hit on that. We've got some other stuff we can talk about. Let me lock up here real quick. Jeff and John, if you want to fill Chad in on the secret sauce, and then Jeff, I need an intro.
Well, how am I supposed to talk him right at the? Okay, look,
I do it every single week.
I'm gonna write some stuff. John, give Chad the broad strokes of like normal stuff that happened.
In the very beginning, we're gonna do introductions. We're gonna introduce ourselves to our listening audience, and we'll kind of riff back and forth just a little bit. After we're done with that, we'll introduce you. And then we'll chat for a little bit, and then we'll probably go to our bit called wine, beer, spirit, or pop culture reference. It's a trivia question, and it's my turn this week. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to give a term, go around the panel, and you're going to guess what it is. And then we'll get to the interview portion of the show, and that can go anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. We don't tend to be real hard hitting, but we'll want to ask some pretty detailed questions about what's going on with you and with your brands and stuff like that. And then we'll pretty much, we probably won't get to a booze news. Sometimes we do booze news when we don't have a guest. And then we'll just kind of wrap up. We'll do the social media links and all that kind of stuff. And at the very end of the show, we're going to all reach back and punch the cameras and say, "Where you never drink alone," and punch the camera. And you can join in with that, or just sit back and look like at the crazy people that we are, or whatever. And then we'll wrap up.
What was the toast? We never drink alone.
Never drink alone.
I'll say thanks again for joining us at the We Like Drinking podcast, and then we all say, "Where you never drink alone."
Okay.
Chad's like, what in the hell? I go from
why did I do this? Yeah.
I went from milk and honey to this shit.
Chad, question for as I'm introducing you in the chat, because I'm seeing that the Hochstadter's Vatted straight rye whiskey is like a sub brand of Cooper Spirits. As I introduce you, do you want me to refer to you as being from Cooper Spirits, or specifically of the Vatted straight rye whiskey?
No. From a title standpoint, I'm the director of innovation for Cooper Spirits, and so all of these are, as opposed to like the Hocksteader thing, be more confusing.
Okay, got it. All right, Eccles, I think we're good. Yeah.
Chad, anything that you want us to really focus on? Anything you want us to shy away from, or you good with whatever?
I mean, look, there's a lot here in the rye whiskey space, and I've been handed. I worked with Rob like a long time ago, and then various times over the years, and now I've really engaged the company in a formal way. So inheriting that library that Rob built, and now continuing to manage it, plays into all of these things, and some of those are proprietary, some I can talk about, but I can talk about juice in detail and all of these and the thought processes behind each one. You've got to have different drinkers, but in different occasions within these, with our rye portfolio, and some exciting stuff on the way as well.
Okay. Okay to touch on the future?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Okay to touch on your past?
Absolutely. No,
right.
This is born out of the craft cocktail revival in, New York.
Yep. Did you work with Rob there?
Well, so real quick.
What?
So Rob showed up at Pegu Club one night, and I knew who Rob's father was through our friend Ted Hay, Dr. Cocktail. And Ted had mentioned who Rob was, and then Sasha, my old business partner, he had met Rob in London. So I was already aware of him. And when I met Rob, he came into Pegu. He didn't realize I recognized him, knew who his father was. And I was flat out, as we're trying samples of Saint Germain, this would have been in 06, almost a year before it was released. I said, when are you going to bring back Creme Vet? And it kicked off, a very good friendship.
Excellent.
Turned into a productive working relationship.
Excellent. Okay. All right. And anything else, guys, that we need to touch on?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Rhett mentioned in the chat, Eccles maybe quit, trying to touch people on our show. It always makes our guests uncomfortable. And also,
that whole thing, that's a whole potato thing.
Oh my God, and I'm sorry, I just have to say this right now, Rhett, you're calling me a square in the chat. Fuck off, bro. Sorry. And Chad, if you want to, I don't know if like Eccles ever tells people, like, so in our StreamYard feed that all of us are seeing, if you click that comments thing, you'll see the folks watching live on YouTube, and sometimes they say smart stuff.
And
so listen to the Rhett guy.
And I could pop stuff up every now and then too. That may happen. All right. Did you let him? So some music's going to play in the beginning. We'll do our intro. Feel free to chime in whenever you want. We'll get to you pretty quick. What?
No, it's like,
oh, gotcha.
You don't
have to explain his jokes.
I'm sorry. I owe him like $8. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Chad, you ready?
I am.
All right, guys. Chad's like, get this over with. Guys, you all set?
Yes.
All right. And here we go.
At the sound of the tone, the official "we like drinking time" will be 5 o'clock. Commence consumption.
There's like no way to exit it. It was really pissing me off here. I forgot to do one thing before I get to this.
Oh my God.
I know.
Chad, I usually like to apologize and be like, oh, it's not like this. This happens every week.
It's always like this.
319 shows in a row.
All right. Now, so you guys can hear this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys can hear that?
Wait, what'd you just play? I didn't hear anything.
You couldn't. Oh, wait. God dang it. Try it again. I'm glad I tested it. Chrome, this, share audio. There we go. And then get it here. All right.
Yeah.
Now you hear it.
Michael's always the tester. I'm glad I could be one of your testees.
With that.
At the sound of the tone, the official "we like drinking time" will be 5 o'clock. Commence consumption.
This week on episode 319 of the We Like Drinking podcast, we'll be airing grievances, playing some drinking games, and we are getting down with some killer spirits with Chad Solomon of Cooper Spirits. So crack open that beer, uncork that wine, and let's get drinking! All right, the show is just kicked off, and I think I've made 78 errors already. So, things are going about normal. But let me start off by saying cheers, my podcast drinking friends, and welcome to Happy Hour 319 of your favorite award-winning topical beer and wine education podcast focusing on fun. We like to do it. So make sure you never miss another episode of our brand of drinking fun by visiting welikedrinking.com/subscribe.
Subscribe.
So we have a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it and find out who we're drinking with. We have our usual panel members. We have our California Sustainable Wine Growing Ambassador and recovering wine blogger, Jeff Solomon.
Woo! What's up, everyone?
We have our commercial brewer and snake wrangler, John Ruyak.
Hey, everybody.
And I am your host and certified specialist of wine, Jeff Eccles. Now, our guest this week is the Director of Trade, Advocacy, and Innovation for the Cooper Spirits Company. He is here this week specifically to talk about the third bottling of their Hochstadter's Vatted Straight Rye Whiskey, a unique whiskey where multiple single malts are blended together in a vat to create a new and complex flavors. Please help us welcome Chad Solomon. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Sorry about all the mix-up in the beginning. Luckily, none of that has to show up in the actual podcast, so nobody knows what we're talking about right now. But how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm here. I think we're all on the same coast, so it's just, there's no time split.
It helps a lot. People aren't yawning and stretching. That does wonders for us. So now we all have a little bottle of something. I shouldn't say a little bottle. It's a big bottle of something.
Got a Mickey's Big Mouth.
I love the opening on this. But we are drinking the Slow and Low Rock and Rye, a very unique whiskey blend here. Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that we're drinking and how we can find it in pharmacies and saloons?
The saloons, yes. The TTB has intervened, and so pharmacies, while historically has precedent, no longer the case. No, this is so Slow and Low. Hochstadter's Slow and Low. Hochstadter's a brand was born in 1884 in New York City by a wine and spirits importer named Mr. Hochstadter and Charles Jacquin. Rob Cooper, who founded Cooper Spirits, his grandfather ended up buying and becoming president of Charles Jacquin AC upon the repeal of Prohibition in 1934. And the Hochstadter's brands kind of sunset, and they were produced under the Jacquin's name throughout the 20th century. So Rob Cooper, who founded Cooper Spirits, he created a little brand called Saint Germain that came to market in April of 2007. And kind of hot on the heels of that, this is really kind of a little bit of a time capsule, brand and company, in that this really speaks to what was happening in the world of spirits at the time, especially in New York City. We all lived in New York. I bartended at a place called Milk and Honey in the Lower East Side. Started there essentially early 2002. I was on the opening team at Pegu Club at the same time, and I ended up going into business with both Sasha Petrosky from Milk and Honey as well as Audrey Saunders at Pegu Club. And during this time, I met Rob Cooper as he was bringing Saint Germain to market. Well, about a year after Saint Germain came to market, he approached me to consult on the naming of what ultimately became Slow and Low. Said as he was thinking about his next product, he saw how excited we were at the time about rye whiskey. There were still only a couple of brands available. It's important. Rittenhouse, came back, and that arrived in New York in the fall of 2005. And, before that, you had, Old Overhaul, Wild Turkey 101 rye, Van Winkle 13-year rye was available. You might have a Black Maple Hill, 18. There was some that's kicking around. Linnell Smothers released Linnell's Heretic rye. There were a couple of things kicking around, but Rob really saw the excitement. It was like, you know what? if I could create if I've got Hochstadter's, this Rock and Rye in my family portfolio, he really thought about it on an elemental level: spirit, sweetener, some sort of botanical, and fruit. And so, you see, like, for the botanical, horehound was a common one that was purported to have medicinal properties. Well, his idea was, okay, throughout the 20th century, Rock and Rye really became, the quality declined significantly. And so he's like, I want to resurrect it, but with integrity, but I want to modernize it through the lens of a classic 19th century style rye whiskey old fashioned. So for the fruit, I just want there to be citrus peel. Let's bring in bitters in the place of the botanical, and then, we'll sweeten it. And that's as far as he had gotten, and he also was like, compared to bottling other cocktails, an aromatic drink that doesn't really have any fresh citrus or something like this, it's not going to oxidize. It's got a lot more portability, shelf stability. So all of his ideas come into play. And it's like, if I could create a bar quality old fashioned in a bottle under the guise of Rock and Rye, I think that's got legs. So he came to me. I was like, all right, okay, cool. I totally get it. What do you want the brand to be about? And he's like, I want it to be, rock and roll Americana. Okay, it's pretty easy. And the name was born ultimately out of all the names that came up and kind of we kicked around. I submitted to him. The bartender's choice phenomenon, especially coming out of Milk and Honey, was big, where you're taking care of a guest. They come in, they want to be turned on to something maybe they haven't had, really amplify their experience. And, we had to develop a very quick shorthand language to, like, get the best out of a guest. So there was a euphemism at the time, stirred down and brown. Or like kind of like an old-fashioned style drink, stirred up and boozy, stirred brown and boozy, for a Manhattan variant. So slow and low is a euphemism on stirred brown and down.
Okay.
I ended up then that progressed working on formulation. And one of the first things was, we don't want this to be too sweet. They were gonna sweeten this to the same degree as a 1 sugar cube and 2 ounces of rye whiskey. And which is, it works out to 4 grams of sugar for every 2 ounces of booze is what that is. And that's exactly what it's sweetened at. Then it was like looking at the maceration of citrus peel. There is Angostura bitters in it. And it's really, that's what it is. The initial formulation on this was 6 years old with an age statement and 98 proof. And really what happened was Rob went to Alberta Distillers in 2008 and started a series of purchases of, at the time, 9 and 10-year-old rye from there. He also started buying barrels elsewhere, and there really wasn't a lot of barrels laying around. And he lucked out. He was first. So he really, really did get the pick of the honey barrels, And so as this was coming to life, really it was, okay, there are finite resources. Am I going to put all my 6-year juice in this? Or seeing like how excited we were for just really great straight rye whiskey, Hochstadter, the Vatted Rye, was born out of taking a several straight ryes. These aren't single malts. There are some malted ryes in here, but they're not all single malts. But combining and blending them together to create a unique flavor profile, really leaning on that the classic art of blending, as opposed to there's obviously great single source ryes, but as a non-distilling producer and I'm getting starting out, how could he create a blend and a profile that was unique to the house? And that's what the Hochstadter's Vatted Rye was born out of. And so you kind of see 3 things shaping up. The Lockstock whiskey portfolio started with a 13-year age statement release, and this has always been 100% rye. There's no malt. That's 100% rye mash bill, all coming from Alberta Distillers. They're distilled in Calgary. The rye is grown there in Alberta near Calgary, near the distillery. And what's unique in particular about this is very similar to the MGP in Indiana, where they had their seasoning rye that Seagram's had created, and that you see, the classic 95% rye, 5% barley mash bill. Well, this is 100% rye, but they don't malt. They're using koji, the same aspergillus mold that you see in soy sauce and miso, but they've isolated a particular strain of koji that responds very well with the rye, and it creates its own enzymes, therefore helping break down the grain more, and it helps produce more yield and make the rye less reactive. And so, and in the process, it yields a pretty interesting flavor profile. It's quite delicious, very classic, baking spice, toffee, gingerbread, warm gingerbread. Those notes are very, I think, endemic to that profile. And the other thing that's very unique about, the juice out ADL, Rob saw up front, was looking at barrels that were not pre-toasted and that only had a char of 3.5, combined with cold weather aging. There was never any set, I'm going to let it go this long. It was, let's see what happens. But it was okay. But the purchase was purchased with the intent of, let's see how it goes. We're going to check it year over year over year. So this is a 20-year age statement, which has just hit the market, is out now. And we've, so far within the lock stock line, there's been a 13-year, a 16-year, an 18-year. And then this is all in. This is I think this year we're putting out 1,200 cases of and those are 3-pack cases of the 20-year. So I realize that's a lot, starting at your question. No. But they all do, it all springs from, kind of the same place, and, different uses, occasions, for rye whiskey. It's really, really delicious and interesting rye.
Yeah, I don't know. Chad, could you turn the volume, not on your mic, but on your speakers down just a hair? Hopefully you can you still hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, that's good. So what do you see as like the best way to drink this? I'm just drinking this neat right now, but you mentioned it's very much like an old fashioned, and you really get that on the nose, on the feel, on the flavor. I mean, it's very much an old fashioned kind of play. So you recommend
the prescriptive serve is 2 ounces over ice.
Okay.
Let it open up. There is we do use air dried Florida navel orange peel, and it's delicious, and you get it. There's just no substitute for a fresh orange twist. So definitely not going to hurt it. It we always like to say it helps point the drink up. Doesn't need it, but it's there. And from a bitters standpoint, there are bitters there. They're clearly present. You get the spice in the profile.
Yep.
Bitters are one of those things where some people like a lot more. If you want to add a dash or two, by all means. But that is really the specific serve and what was intended for. Some people like to drink it straight. It's a sidecar to a beer. I'm always amazed when I see people, using it as an ingredient in recipes. And that's kind of the wonderful thing. You put something out in the world that it finds its own utility.
Yeah, for sure. Are you guys drinking yours straight as well?
Yes.
You know what? I started neat, but then I brought like a little thing of ice cubes and just dropped a few in, and it is so fun, like knowing that botanical nature, like you're seeing like the oils kind of precipitate out as it gets nice and cool. And Eccles' favorite term when he talks about liquor is he talks about how smooth it is, and this is definitely there's this wonderful herbaceous approach to it, but the sweetness that's there, it's so smooth. Eccles loves that, so smooth and approachable. And yeah, like this is, how great is that to just have a beautiful cocktail in a bottle? Like I feel like hella fancy right now.
So let me tell you what happened today at the brewery. So last night Eccles said, "Hey, we're getting whiskey FedExed overnight." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, is it going to come to the house?" And my wife's working, and she's from the house, and she's like, "Do I have to keep my eye out for this?" I was going to go ride my bike, and I said, "I don't know. I'll get a text from FedEx that's going to show up." So I'm in the brewery, and we're working on kegging our the Piney Double IPA this morning, and all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, delivery FedEx," and I'm like, "Yes, it's here!" Right? So the FedEx guy pops his head into the brewery, and I quick put on my mask, and I go, "Dude, you got to hang out for a second and see what's in this box." So I get a pair of scissors. I open the box. He's like, "Whoa, I'm so mad that I'm at work right now." Right? So, and then my assistant brewer's like, "We're going to try this, aren't we?" I was like, "Of course we are." So I go up and I get a couple of tasters, and I didn't want to, spoil it for tonight, but I just put a little bit in mine, and I poured a little bit into a glass for him and just tasted it. But yeah, it's just as a sidecar, we went right back. We just finished kegging, and we poured some double IPA into a little 10-ounce glass, and that beer chaser was just pretty awesome this morning to have that little taste. Yeah, at 10:30 in the morning. And,
Absolutely.
What a way to get the day started, right? So that was
I might need to have
way to
this.
start today.
I might need to have this under my desk while I'm teaching tomorrow. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
So now,
that was pretty neat.
Chad, what else you get? Like, I really get the orange notes I get right away, especially on the nose. But then, like these guys are saying, the sugar content, it's not overbearing at all. It's very well balanced across it. I like the progression as it heats up in your mouth. It's very, very well done. Very nice.
Thank you. Well, so and a couple of things to point out. So this is bottled at 42%, 84 proof, and it's, as you guys have noted, it is very, very lush on the palate without being cloying, but it really doesn't drink as hot as 42% would seemingly be. So it's anchored with a base of straight rye. It's a blend of 3 different sourced ryes, all very high rye mash bill. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the sweetener, it's sweetened to that equivalent of that one sugar cube, or 6.6% sugar weight to volume. One of the things that Rob really brought to the table here that also kind of informs this profile, it's maybe a little bit not as classic and an old fashioned, but as opposed to just using straight cane sugar, you're looking for more flavor opportunity as well as better mouthfeel and kind of a higher quality sweetener. So this is actually some raw orange blossom honey in here. And there is some cane sugar in here to be historically accurate with rock candy, with that kind of rock and rye. But the combined total of the two is the equivalent of that 1 sugar cube. But I feel like that's the bridge, because it opens up, you get those citrus top notes, and then it wants to move into that kind of floral, honeyed quality. You get into the rice, that kind of rye spice and bitters intermix, and then you get that kind of rye dry down.
Right.
Rye spice dry down.
A lot of times you drink these things and it's kind of a mishmash of all those flavors, but everything is very singular it mixes well, but those flavors are all very singular in your mouth. You can pick them out rather than search for them. And it's a really nicely balanced.
I mean, it really is. I mean, it really boils down to just those simple elements. There's really nothing to hide behind. It's kind of looking to make sure they're in the right harmony, and that's, I feel like that's where the whiskey and the barrel profile of the whiskey, the mash bill itself, is where you see how those factors are going to have the effect on the other ingredients.
Excellent. All right. So we've gotten through our tasting. There's more to talk about, but we got to take a little break really quick. So John can school us with a little bit we like to call
wine, beer, spirit, or pop culture reference. You know the drill here, guys. I'm going to go around the panel. I'm going to give them a turn, go around the panel, and see what they think about this word that I'm going to throw at them. So this week's term is Torlano. Torlano. All right. Let's try Eccles first this week.
Man, you guys, every single week, you guys are going with me first.
We're picking on you.
I assume we're looking at Torlano.
Correct.
Torlano. Torlano. God, there's so much that's happened this week for stuff that could be a pop culture reference. And I think I'm going to go, I think I'm going to go with pop culture reference this week. I think this may have something to do with some kind of driving mishap that may have happened somewhere. So I'm going to go with a pop culture reference.
All right. Eccles as pop culture reference. Chad, what do you think?
So Chad, did you tell Chad before the show what this was all about?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, so since Eccles went with pop culture, I was going to say that, but I'm going to go with, I don't know what it is, but so I'm going to say, I'll go wine, probably some sort of Italian winemaking technique or family person.
It does sound very wine grapey.
It totally sounds like Italian wine. I like that pick.
So we have the other Jeff, and he's also the other Solomon this week.
What? I never even noticed that. Hey, Chad, are we related?
Probably somewhere. I don't know.
So Torlano, Torlano.
Yep.
Torlano. You know, I do know this term. This is a pop culture term. You know, people ask me, they say, Jeff, how do you know so much? And I watched a lot of TV growing up. That's basically everything that I ever learned. And one of my favorite shows watching growing up, Italian in nature, was starring Tony Danza. It was called Who's the Boss? And his daughter was played by Alyssa Torlano. Pop culture reference.
What?
I thought it was Milano.
Yeah. That ruins the bit.
So we got 2 pop culture references and a wine. All right. This week's term Torlano is a pop culture reference. It has nothing to do with TV. It has nothing to do with racing cars, although I'm going to give it to Eccles because it's closest to that, because this is the crazy mofo that skied down the shoulder of the Half Dome.
Wait, what?
Yeah, a dude
That
skied
happened?
down the shoulder of Half Dome and lived to tell about it.
You're kidding me.
I am not kidding you. I've
Wow.
climbed Half Dome. I don't know
Yeah.
why anybody would think to do that.
Okay.
Did Ansel Adams take a picture of this?
Yeah, it's now selling at Yosemite National Park for $15,000.
And the term is?
Torlano.
Excellent. Very well done, Jeff. Very well done, John. Good job, everyone. Chad, well done as well. I was thinking you had it there. It did
I
very
was
much
thinking,
sound like a
like,
wine term.
It sounded like Turlato almost. Like, yeah, I was totally thinking wine there.
Okay, so we've got, Chad, we've got the slow and low, but there's also the Vatted. This is your third release of the Vatted, is that right?
Correct. So this was first edition came out in 2015. Second one 2017, and then this one it was both the 20-year and the Vatted were supposed to come out last year, but with COVID it really kind of gummed things up for a second. Anyways, the Vatted is now available. There are only about 1,500 cases on this. This is an allocated release, and the idea here, so vatted, it's a Scottish term. Rob picked that term, especially at the time, aspirations to become a distiller, but wading into the whiskey business as a non-distilling producer and collecting, if you will, sourcing some interesting straight ryes, was enamored with the art of blending. And vatting is historically, you see it used as a vatted single malt, which would be a blend of exclusively single malts, no grain whiskey. You also see vatted grain whiskeys. Compass Box, John Glazer most famously brought back the first vatted grain back in, I think it was 2002, the Eleuthera as his first release. But that was in the Scotch world. Rob, this is the first time this bottling, the Hochstadter's bottling, is the first time vatted has been used here in an American whiskey.
Okay.
And so this third release contains straight ryes aged 4 to 18 years, 5 different sources of rye, all high rye mash bill. And the heart of the blend is 7 and 8 years old. If you actually average out math on paper, it comes in at like 8.1 years old. And so the other idea here was that this is, it's an 8-year-old rye, that's meant, it's delicious to sip on its own, neat on the rocks or just a little bit of water, but it really is also built to anchor the iconic rye, cocktails, Prescription, Julep, Sazerac, Manhattan, the Brooklyn, etc., bottled at 100 proof.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I was going to ask like what kind of drinks you would make with this one. So as you've released each one, is there a recipe you have for what you blending, or is it really just you guys are playing with blends and finding out what you find is like a sweet point for flavor?
That's a great question. So it's even further detail here. So one of the other ideas was because Rob has, history in Pennsylvania, going back to his grandfather getting involved in purchasing Jacquin's AC in 34, and the history of Pennsylvania as a historic rye stronghold, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York in particular. So, as Rob looked at sourcing ryes and the flavor profile of the blend and the juice itself, it'd be, unapologetically rye, good rye spice. And I think this is, you guys don't have it there to try, but it's, you have that kind of classic baking spice profile, but leans a little bit more, instead of like clove and cinnamon, it's a little bit more nutmeg and mace. And you do get that kind of that, bright kind of almost, gingerbread quality, but then it goes into, it really dries down in a lovely way in a kind of German rye bread. And I think one of the most, telltale signs, with rye is kind of that green note. It's that big dill spearmint quality, that almost kind of, piquant quality that rye has. And, and then you can see that expressed very, very vividly, in some ryes, and then it can be much more restrained in others. It's definitely present here. And so every one of these, as we manage as the library, we're looking for those sensory targets and that profile and maintaining that, as opposed to just what's the best we can come up with each time. We're really, really quite happy with this. Now the trick is growing it.
Right.
I just have to ask, because you start talking about like rye bread, and I start salivating. We're getting close to St. Patrick's Day, and I'm thinking about all the Reubens that I make with like the extra corned beef, and I'm just wondering, like, are you a big proponent of pairing rye and rye cocktails with foods? Like, is that something that people are getting into these days? Because I just want some Thousand Island dressing and some sauerkraut.
I want a pastrami sandwich right now.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think there are certain things that absolutely make sense. There's that kind of a savory, interesting savory world there that rye absolutely immediately plugs into very, very well. And yeah, I mean, it's delicious. I think though sometimes you've got these big boozy things. There's only so many opportunities before you're going to start dulling your palate, and depending on the food you're eating, has really got to rise to the occasion as you're dealing with drinks that are much higher ABV. And that's really the balance to keep in mind as you're doing this pairings. But otherwise, yeah, of course, encouraging it.
So you mentioned the greener elements of rye, like dill and mint and things like that. Are you getting that mainly from the younger part of the blend, the 4-year? Something that would seem like, to me, I'm not a blender. I mean, we brew beer, we put it out. We don't. Some sour places blend beer, but we don't blend. Is that the kind of thing you get out of a rye that's not aged for as long?
So I found it up easily through at least 10 years of age, and then at a certain point, it does want to start. I don't want to say it disappears completely. It's just you're watching that kind of browning of that flavor. It stays very kind of dry, savory, spicy, but it's just not as green. It's probably the best way to describe it. I've also heard different theories on where that comes from. Everything from it being a microorganism that grows on the barrel and that helps contribute as the juice ages in the barrel. That's unique to rye. Obviously, I think certain grains and certain cereals, strains of rye are going to produce that more than others. So, but it is a commonality that I find in high rye mash bill ryes.
So now, Chad, you mentioned that you worked at Milk and Honey, and a flashpoint, an iconic place for when you're talking about craft cocktails. And you worked there for 5 years, is that right?
So April of 2002 to January of 2007, but started business with Sasha and was, always involved.
Always
in
involved
some
with it.
form or fashion. So really the business started, it was called Cups and Buttons, and we started as New York
Right.
City's first beverage-only catering company, and that we launched in June of 06. And that quickly became, bigger than just doing the private events. That really took off like a rocket, but that became bar consultancy, brand work. And then ultimately that, Cups and Buttons on our own, we opened two bars. One, a very short-lived one here in California and Los Angeles, and then Midnight Rambler in Dallas, Texas.
So how did that initial, kind of where you launched from that, what have you carried from those days through to, what you're doing today with Cooper Spirits?
Well, so interestingly enough, having had the opportunity to work very closely with Sasha Petrosky, Audrey Saunders, and Rob, there's really a shared DNA in terms of the integrity of what they do. So I think that there's bringing a bartender's approach. We're looking at the usage occasions of our products. We're looking at the integrity of the products, their production. We're very classically minded, but yet want to be innovative at the same time. How do we draw on history? How do we draw on best practice? But we're not limited to that. How do we continue to innovate forward? And that's, from being mentored by those three people I mentioned, that's what, the way they approached it. And I think, it's very much the way we've approached our career. It's very, very kind of rooted in, in classic, cocktail culture, but also classic booze culture. Mm-hmm. And, how do we continue to make that, relevant? It's constantly educating. It blows my mind that it's almost 20 years since I, started at Milk and Honey, and it feels like yesterday, and, everything that's happened in between. So, I brought those elements,
and
along.
I feel it. Like I really feel it in this drink. Like this is pouring it from a bottle. It is very classic. There's a lot of history in the bottle. So I can definitely see exactly what you're saying in everything you're presenting to us today. John or Jeff?
I was just going to say, I was reading a little bit about the slow and low and the rock and rye. And, next time I get tuberculosis, maybe I'll use that to treat it.
It's such an interesting, the whole kind of medicinal element is kind of interesting when you think about it, because, best we can tell from the history side is, if you look at post-Civil War, you have this entire generation of the wounded that now need pain management, PTSD. You see the rise of patent medicines that are loaded with narcotics in some form or fashion, that are very booze heavy. And, rock and rye emerges in that, from the kind of the simple saloon practice of, serving, sugar alongside your whiskey to take the bite off. We also have to remember that really until, the 1870s, booze would have been shipped by the barrel, not by the bottle. And just like, its integrity was not ensured. It could get stepped on, cut with. You didn't really know the integrity of the juice you're going to get. And so the medicinal angle comes in, and the patent medicines take off. And what's really interesting from a totally esoteric historical standpoint is in 1883, there's a tax adjustment made because smart guys saw that they were taxing medicine for less than whiskey, so they just sell their whiskey as medicine. Well, Uncle Sam gets wise to this, and they actually increase the cost of medicine because the narcotic problem is, really, really creeping up. And that's when you see rock and rye basically turn pro, and become a whiskey as opposed to medicinal. And it's possible that one newspaper writer is kind of the running theory right now, put forth the idea that it worked with, upper respiratory issues. And it just stuck, and everybody just stuck with that story and ran with it. And, as a marketing, thing.
So one other quick question by me, but not a short answer by you. Tell us about the inside of the label and the artwork we see inside the label of Slow and Low.
Right. So, there's this, you see, you've got a couple of things here. Obviously, kind of the iconic. This was a very much, founded in kind of like American free-spirited rebelliousness, irreverence, are kind of baked into the DNA of the brand. Fortune favors the bold. It's interesting. You see the term high on rye. This is not only high in rye from a grain standpoint, but you've got that terminology before it was applied to other forms of intoxication. As an old booze term. It's an enthusiasm, and it's kind of just speaks to the brand essence.
That's
cool
so
stuff.
cool.
It's cool stuff.
I gotta say, Chad, it's so fun having you on the show, just because it's so obvious as you're talking about all these entities of Cooper spirits that you've just got this wealth of knowledge, and that's ever so present. If you type in Chad Solomon into a search engine on the internet. With as many people that have the same name as you, Chad, you're the one that shows up most often. And I found myself intrigued watching you. You had like a couple snippets in a series with like a bunch of other bartenders talk about like really cool like bartender stuff. And I was wondering if I could pick your brain a little bit. I've got two questions. One I know the answer to, and one I'm really looking forward to hearing the answer to. I want to know, in your opinion, what is the most underrated drinking city? And what is the most overrated drinking city?
Oh man, who am I going to offend here?
That's our show, man.
Okay, I'll give you this criteria. In my opinion, there are cities with a high amount of vertical density, which is really, really, I know, kind of in the weeds, but really lends itself to a shortage of other activities, and people like eat and drink more. And so you have a much more dynamic nightlife and diversity of bars. And you can really name however many of those cities, there are that really kind of check those boxes. And I think though right now, especially after this year, that's not going to be the case. You're seeing this pendulum swing the other way. And I think it's to the benefit of a lot of other markets that are going to get a lot of talent and a lot of patrons that are looking for that. And that's I think going to be a cool thing in the interim. And also in the denser markets that are going through kind of these challenges, it's going to spur creativity. Rents are going to possibly become reasonable again. And that's really going to I think push nightlife forward and types of drinking experiences, drinking cities into some new and fresh territory. So to be specific, I mean, I really having spent so much time in New York, really love New York. But I would say for the past couple of years up until this, Los Angeles was one of my favorite ones. And it's a city, when we opened a bar here 10 years ago, it really wasn't necessarily the case. We were right kind of at the precipice of watching that dynamic come back. And then I think you've probably seen this, but I think Fort Worth is super underestimated. It's the one off the map and no one's seeing it. Fort Worth is freaking cool and it's on the move. I had the super lucky benefit to speak with Kinky Friedman one time, and off camera I got to spend a lot of time with him. And as a native Texan, I'd been to Fort Worth, but I hadn't spent a whole lot of time. And he's the one who really kind of hipped us to it. And as we set up shop in Dallas, really got to know Fort Worth. And I think that's your out of the way place.
Nice. I wonder how many people miss out when they fly into the Dallas Fort Worth airport and they go to Dallas. They're going the wrong way.
Yeah, Fort Worth is a gem. It really is.
Yeah, man. So you're saying I always get it confused. Is it deep Ellum or lower Ellum? The Ellum overrated?
Not necessarily. I think it's just like any other. I mean, it's a real estate pendulum question. There are some killer little gems in that neighborhood, but it's like everywhere else. Big finance comes in. The real estate firms. Basically, two entities own that entire neighborhood, so you can watch the way they manage those assets, and Unfortunately for the consumer and the operators, we're the ones, getting the short end of the stick. But no, there are some gems there.
Nice. I mean, I rolled through there once. I don't remember much. I was
the musical history of Deep Ellum is what is really the coolest. You've got Lead Belly, Blind Lemon Jefferson. Robert Johnson recorded. Only ever recorded twice in Texas, once in San Antonio and once in Dallas. And the Dallas recording studio is right on essentially the edge of Deep Ellum in downtown. And if you think about what Blind Lemon Jefferson's the first guy to end up in Chicago, he's trained Lead Belly, he taught Lead Belly. That alone right there, Deep Ellum. The old SRO hotels. You got obviously, some of the seedier elements of nightlife they do with the Cowboys, alongside meat packing joints. It's a really, really cool historic area for if you dig into that side of it. But the music
I wish I would have taken advantage of that knowledge. I was just wasted on hurricanes and queso dip.
Our good friend Stubb is losing his mind right now at this discussion. So Chad Solomon, I love when things kind of come together. I was watching a YouTuber earlier this week that was making a drink, and he says, I'm gonna dry shake this. And I'm like, dry shake? What's this guy talking about with a dry shake? And then I find out that Chad Solomon is like coming on our show. And I know you won't admit to being in the inventor of it because somebody found it in a publication like 100 years ago. But really, in the modern day bartending world, you kind of are the innovator or the reinventor of the dry shake. So if our listeners aren't sure what I'm talking about right now, what is a dry shake when I'm going to mix a drink, and why is it important?
Okay, so the dry shake came about the end of 2005, beginning of 2006, and this is also really, as we're talking about egg white drinks, egg yolk, and we're talking about emulsification. You've got fat and water, right? They don't want to integrate, so they need a bit more help. And everything from, especially at the top end, to Apex egg white cream drink being a Ramos Gin Fizz, needs a lot of emulsification to really get that set well. So just a standard egg sour. And we made, working at both Milk and Honey and Pegu Club. I also worked briefly at Flatiron Lounge. We were at the forefront of saying, hey, eggs can be delicious in drinks. So we made tons of those. I had a very serious spinal injury that started to degrade in 2006, and I needed a hack. And it just became intuitive working in those places, that when you build a drink, we come from the Ice Last school of bartending, and that, both Dale DeGroff taught that, Uncle Dale in the early days.
Yep.
One of our foundational, at Milk and Honey, also at Pegu Club. So you build the entire drink, then you add your ice. We're able to manage our dilution better. Well, along those lines, if you build all of your ingredients and then you just throw your ice in and shake it out, you're adding water at the same time you're trying to emulsify the egg protein into the drink. So my thought was just like, well, wait a second, if I can pause that and get a better emulsification starter, then uncap, just shaking dry with no ice, and then uncap my shaker, then add ice, can I consistently and more easily produce? Because, the centrifugal, or all of the kind of mechanics of the shake, really a lot of wear and tear on the body. And so shaking without ice, you don't have that weight, that velocity you're managing. You're accomplishing, that. And it honestly, at the time, it kind of came together pretty quick. A couple of, I worked with Jim Meehan. He saw it. He's like, have you showed Audrey? I showed Sasha it, and he was like, it was incorporated into the program very fast. David Wondrich, I talked to me about it, and I said, it seemed so obvious at a certain point. I was like, I've always said, somebody probably knew about this before. Greg Boehm, who owns Cocktail Kingdom, is a friend, and he had given me a book, the first edition of Bottoms Up, which his parents published. And it turns out, so Sean Sewell in Victoria, BC, at the Hotel Vancouver, he's the one who found it, and he sent it to Gary Regan. And Gary had called me. He was like, hey, Sean, it was under our nose the whole time, and I owned the book. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I think Sean found it in 2011. the dry shake happened. Yeah, and that's one of those great things is that it got out there, and I mean, a lot of people can make egg white drinks very simply and achieve a great result.
Wow. And for all you home bartenders, I think it works with your vegan garbanzo bean foam as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
Okay.
The aquafaba is another great hack. Less sulfur. You don't get the sulfur and the albumin in the nose.
John, anything else?
No, I got stuck on garbanzo beans.
That's always the killer.
Always distracts you. Jeff Solomon, anything
Throws
else?
me off my game.
Oh, geez. Well, I was going to ask you. Somebody asked me what was the answer that I knew. I knew the Fort Worth answer. Just look. Type Chad Solomon into the interweb. You're going to find some amazing stuff. I also know the answer to this question I'm about to ask him. So, Chad, say somebody wanted to work for you as a bartender and you needed them to showcase their skills. What drink would you have them make you?
So there's two. Two foundational kind of exhibiting technique, or at least understanding what's happening. And honestly, I would say though, if somebody wants to work with us, a ability to want to learn and want to improve is far better than being fully formed. Being teachable and being passionate are but that being said, the two drinks that I think are really showcase two very important skill sets is being able to manage a dilution in a gin martini and making different balances, so is it a 5-to-1 or equal parts, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 5-to-1, and being able to consistently hit that because you're really playing with ABV quite a bit. And so being able to make a drink in ranges is what I call that on the gin martini side. And then your classic Cuban shaken daiquiri, and what we're looking for there is how well you can aerate and then balances ingredients, but really proper aeration. If you look at the textural dynamic in the liquid medium, it's very homogeneous. It's not as dynamic as plated food. So our ability to be able to manipulate texture gives us, that many more types of service options.
I love listening to bartenders and spirits folks on here because it's like, again, and I feel like I say this every week. It's like a couple wine guys and a dude that makes beer. That's the one thing where we're always like just eager to learn and figure things out. And I just love that idea too of like, the eagerness and the desire to learn, the intellectual curiosity. It almost sounds like you'll remind me of like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of bartending, honestly.
Just blowing me away with the science and the art of mixed drinks is just crazy. It's just, it's like this big happy chemistry experiment,
You got me all inspired, Chad. So really, I've got all the booze that's in my house now are like different samples that folks send me. But like, if I were going to start from scratch and I wanted to just start kind of like build my liquor cabinet, and I didn't have a whole lot to spend, like I'm talking $200. What do I need to go get right now? First of all, I know I need an amazing rye, right?
and I will say this real quick. To that end, keep on the lookout for Vatted Rye from Cooper Spirits. Look, I think if you want to be a bartender, start out with the classic cocktails. You need a couple of good American whiskeys that are representative. You need a good brandy. There are some, I would say I'd want a good agricole rum, and it's called the French style, a really good kind of Spanish rum in the Cuban style, and then a really heavy, like funky English style rum, kind of typified by Jamaica and Guyana, right? So that's going to cover all your main bases in the world of cane spirits. Obviously, you've got to have a banging tequila, a mezcal, couple of good modifiers, an orange curacao, a maraschino, solid absinthe, and then I'd look at, a solid blended scotch and maybe, one peated one. And if you really just look at that with a couple of syrups, you can make a ton of stuff. Oh, sorry, dry gin. Really, a good classic London dry. Gotta have London dry in there. I think that's the most foundational that you could really, really cover a lot of bases in kind of drinking classic cocktail, lexicon with those ingredients, and then get a baseline and grow from there.
We need to make a We Like Drinking masterclass and bring Chad back and build our bar. All right, so Chad, I've got my bar built, and somebody comes in and they're like, "Hey man, I want a psychedelic sound of the improved bergamot sour. What am I gonna get?"
Okay, I mean, any type of sonic non sequitur naming a drink immediately is the greatest thing you can do on a cocktail menu, because people see that name and they're like, just like you,
yeah.
What is that? Which means I might, end up getting one and to taste it. So it's an egg white drink. Essentially, it was, how do I create a more symphonic and psychedelic version of Audrey Saunders' Earl Grey Martini? And it's the quickest way to describe it: London dry gin infused with some really high performance Earl Grey that I sourced from Sebastian Beckwith and his company In Pursuit of Tea. Just stunningly amazing Earl Grey tea, bergamot bomb. And then, it's Audrey's is amazing, but the thing that I do to the psychedelic sound is I'm really looking at kind of taking a perfumer's approach, both on the nose and creating a bespoke citrus bergamot perfume to then spray the canvas using that egg white on top of the drink as an aromatic canvas to kind of set the stage before that sip. And then adding more dimensions, kind of like a psychedelically symphonic in the citrus modifiers and the citrus liqueur modifiers. And the improved is a nod to the improved cocktail. If you look at the cocktail liquor, sugar, water, bitters, 1806,
Mm-hmm.
then the 1860 version, the fancy cocktail, which includes the version, the addition of a modifier, either maraschino or orange curacao. And then by the 1870s, the improved version, which really typifies absinthe, but you see that maraschino absinthe play. So I took Audrey's Earl Grey Martini, and you've got some maraschino and a little bit of absinthe that helps set off. There's also Cointreau in it. So you've got that Cointreau, absinthe, maraschino kind of symphonic undertone that really just brings a lot more dimension. And it's that drink tastes like seeing Spiritualized in 1997 perform Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space. In my mind, that's what I wanted on the palate. And that's the idea. So that's what you get.
That's amazing. I want one so bad.
That just took John Ruyak back to a Robin Trower concert in 1973.
All right. We're too Rolling Stoned.
All right, guys. Any last questions for Chad before we move on? Jeff?
Yeah, he said Cointreau, and every time I make orange chocolate biscottis, we put Cointreau in it,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of boost up the orange peel, and I sneak a little bit on the side.
Okay, Chad.
Okay.
Do the different colors of curacao taste different?
No. Red, blue, and I mean the ones I've tried, I haven't seen any difference.
Thank you. I was afraid to ask. You were like, well, obviously, like, to me, it's all like German beer. How, like, it doesn't matter what the label is; they all taste the same.
No, I honestly, it's kind of fun. I mean, we went through the very precious and like, no, we've got to kind of reclaim our history. But those products are actually, they're quite escapist. I mean, they have their place.
Yeah.
And Chad, is there anything we missed that you wanted to hit on today, or is there anything you want to let our listeners know that we haven't touched on?
Well, so I would just say that for check out Drink Slow and Low on Instagram and drinkslowandlow.com to find it. You can find us on Drizzly and Reserve Bar sourcing this, and you can look for these products as well. They're allocated. There's limited supplies, but definitely look into it. The one thing I didn't mention is that Slow and Low also, one of the coolest things about working on this was, and watching Rob Cooper's mind work, was one of the names that we'd come up with, that me and my partner Christy Pope came up with when we submitted all these names to Rob, was Canned Heat. And the second I did the long presentation, all these names and what they could mean and blah, blah, blah. I got to canned heat. Rob was like, hot damn. He's like, let's put it in a can. And that meeting happened in 2009. He didn't start working on the can until 2012. And it took 4 years to be able to innovate to figure out how to put 84 proof juice in a 100 milliliter can. But we were the first to market. And so this is available, So there's basically a double rye old fashioned in a can. It's the same.
Yes.
Juice. It's the same juice as the bottle. And so it's super portable. When we can go back to concerts, sporting events, tailgating, camping, like obviously camp now, boom, here you go.
You so buried the lead. Like that's awesome.
You know what it is? You're walking down the streets of Nagoya, Japan at 3:30 in the morning, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can make it home, guys. And you look up and you see a vending machine, and you see some slow and low rock and rye in a can. Probably has a picture of Tommy Lee's face on it on the vending machine for no reason. Tommy Lee Jones' face, and you pop that out, and then you just are energized the whole way home.
That's a genius idea. Like an old fashioned to go. That's just that's brilliant right there.
And then the other bit of new news I'll share with you guys. Coming out in April, I've collaborated with Intelligencia Coffee. Great coffee pioneers in direct trade and, just amazing sourcing, blending, roasting, to source a cold coffee. So slow and low coffee old fashioned inspired by the classic New Orleans Cafe Brûlot, coming out in a bottle, looking at late April and can midsummer.
Whoa. And the bottle, what is it? Will it be as distributed as the current? So, I mean, you can get.
So we're distributed by, this is, for the on-trade by Southern Glazers, and we are available in all 50 states. And this will look to go out as wide a release as we can. I don't know that we're going to hit everywhere right out of the gate, but it's going to be a pretty wide release. And we'll regular addition to the lineup.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that was super cool to work with those guys. Listen to them talk about coffee all day long. That's a whole nother really deep dive.
Absolutely. Jeff, you look like you either want to say something
This is just me bathing in the idea of slow and low in a can and coffee rock and rye. Like that's so cool. I'm really stoked for you guys, and I'm stoked for the consumer that gets to try all that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so folks, definitely be sure to check this out. This is the Hochstadter Slow and Low Rock and Rye that you can find now. They've got their Vatted, they've got their multi-year, the 16-year, 20-year, 8-year, 12-year, 14-year. I think I heard all of those in there. Options that you can get coming up in the can. You got the coffee entry. You got the coffee in a can this summer. You can just go to town on this stuff when you walk into your liquor store. So people are placing orders already from the chat. So this is exciting stuff. So Chad, that's awesome. You really waited till the end and just you pounded us right in the face with it. So that was awesome.
Jab, 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 right hook.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, but we have reached the time. Unfortunately, every bartender knows it. You reach the time of the show where we flip on the lights and call.
Last call.
Last call. Time to clean house and lock the doors. You know what we do here, folks. We're looking for a little bit of help from you. John Ruyak, if the folks want to follow We Like Drinking on the social media platforms, how can they do so?
Follow us on Twitter. That's We Like Drinking 1, the numeral 1. At Instagram is We Like Drinking. And everybody's favorite place to hang out looks like 7/24/365. That's the tavern, welikedrinking.com/tavern. If you're not a member, ask for an invite and we'll probably say yes.
Chad, if the folks want to follow you, they want to follow Cooper, they want to follow Slow and Low, what are the best places for them to follow you on the social media platforms?
Okay, so for Slow and Low, it's Drink Slow and Low on Instagram and Facebook. Drink Lock, Stock, and Barrel. We don't have actually Instagram for Vatted. That is going to be, stay tuned for that. And then if you want to follow me personally on Instagram, it's cuffs, spelled out cuffs and buttons _ OFC official IG.
We'll put it,
I'm not on Facebook.
we'll put all of those in the show notes if you want to go follow them. Jeff Solomon, if the folks have some thoughts on what we do, where can they go to tell us how great we are?
Hey, for those of you watching live, as you ought to do every Tuesday night around 7:30-ish Pacific, as long as we, send our guests the appropriate link, Jeff Eccles.
It helps.
Of course, those of you watching live, we love seeing you in the comment thread. Make sure if you're seeing us on YouTube, mash that like and subscribe button, ding that bell. And for those of you listening to the audio only version on your favorite podcast catching app, it's probably your iPhone. Take a look at your Apple Podcasts app. Go ahead and fill up those empty 5 stars. Leave us a note. Let us know that we're hitting it out the park, that we're the greatest thing since a rock and rye in a can.
And if you've done all that and you're looking to do just a little bit more, considering becoming a patron of the show by visiting welikedrinking.com/pledge to find out for as little as $1 a month how you can help support our show and help us continue to grow. Yes, Jeff?
Eccles, it's March. You know what that means.
What?
For those patrons that are gracious enough to donate $1 a month and have been doing so for so long, it's March, and this is the time where I yell at you all month long, because we are on the march from $1 a month to $2 a month.
Think about that. Think about that, folks. That's the difference of just getting a Venti or a Grande just twice a month. Just twice a month, like you just downsize your coffee and you could support our show.
Yeah, or, hang out outside of an elementary school and shake some kids down for their lunch money. Look, however it happens, pay us in Bitcoin, pay us in NBA Top Shots. We won't know what happened. Just make sure that you send it our way. Show us some love, man.
You can also find the show notes for this episode with all links to the stories or mentions we had at welikedrinking.com/episodes. All right. We got through the rough beginning. We got through the middle. We culminated with the big reveal at the end. But it's the time of the show where I get to say, okay, panel, let's take one last trip around this table and get some final thoughts before we shut off the lights. John Ruyak.
So, Chad, thanks very much for the nice surprise this morning at the brewery. That was really cool. I got through the middle of the show by very judiciously savoring and sipping this rock and rye, slow and low rock and rye throughout the show. Thanks a lot for that. My final thought, wish me luck. I'm getting my first COVID vaccine tomorrow. We'll see what happens,
You'll be fine.
If my left arm is the size of a grapefruit tomorrow, maybe I take a week off work. I don't know.
It's the second one I hear that is so bad. Jeff Solomon.
As somebody who got the second shot, I can tell you, I was a little under the weather. Just, milk it. Let the wife know you need to watch some Netflix for a couple of days. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say, everybody, continue to be safe, be happy. The only way we get out of this mess is by going through it. So let's fucking go through this shit together. You know what I'm saying? Misery loves company, which is why you listen to our miserable podcast every single week. I'm playing. I love everybody.
Chad Solomon, any final thoughts before we let you get out of here?
I just want to thank you guys for a great conversation. Really enjoyed this. And getting to talk to your viewers. Everybody check us out and be safe and be kind to one another.
Absolutely. And Chad, let me reiterate what some of the other guys have said. Thank you so much for sharing this stuff with us. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge. You have such a history and such a knowledge. It was an honor to share a screen with you for a little bit and get to share this drink with you. So we really appreciate your time and your efforts. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
And with that, I'll say thanks again for joining us at the We Like Drinking podcast, where you'll never drink alone.
Chad almost had to knock over his rye to get the punch.
Awesome. Everybody's chiming in saying thank you, Chad. Great guest. Good job. I'm sold. Finishing placing an order. They're all getting in your Earl Grey martini. Sounds great. We'll have to seek one of those out for sure. Awesome. Viewers, thank you so much. This was a Bass Backwards thing because of all my mistakes. So we're going to cut you guys off so we can finally talk to Chad alone. And so thank you all next week.
Behave. That's what they say.
Folks,
Sorry.
make sure you're here. Make sure you're here next week, because next week.
Next week's beer.
Next week is our St. Patrick's Day episode.
A little early. Is it?
Yeah.
Late?
Yeah.
Early? When's
It's
St.
early.
Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
When is Groundhog's Day coming?
We will see y'all next week.